Okay, welcome everyone. And Maddie, you can begin.
Okay, good day, everyone. Welcome to the Youth AI Talk. We are very excited to have you here today. Before introducing today's talk, I would like to give a brief overview about Youth AI, especially the speaker series, because we have quite a few new audience members here today. Okay. For those who are new to the Youth AI Lab, and what we do, we are a youth-led nonprofit U.S. organization dedicated to increasing student to expert connections, AI literacy, and making high school students future ready. This webinar is a part of our monthly speaker series to raise awareness of AI among all communities. We invite experts from academia and industry to share their knowledge and discovery in specific areas of AI. Unlike other technical talks, these talks will be tailored to people without much background in artificial intelligence. Therefore, they are fun to listen to and easy to follow. We hope that by listening to these talks regularly, you will gain a solid knowledge of AI. And please help spread the word about the Youth AI Lab. Thank you for your support of this education and community service initiative. Please also consider visiting our website, which I will momentarily send in the chat, and sign up to receive announcements for other upcoming events like this one. For those who miss our talks, feel free to also read the webinar's summary that will be released after the talk, and that will also have the YouTube video as well. Okay. So far, we have hosted 19 fantastic talks since the kickoff of our Youth AI speaker series, and we're excited to introduce our 20th today to bring us into the new year. We have a lot of exciting opportunities planned for 2023, so if you want to keep up to date with any upcoming talks or events, you can either follow us on social media, Eventbrite, or register on our website at youthai.org. Our speaker series covers important areas of AI, such as efficient AI, graphics AI, cognitive AI, and finance AI. Our speakers are held in high regard in their respective fields, whether it be academia or in industry. We have speakers from big players in industry, such as Facebook or OpenAI, as well as from top AI universities such as Carnegie Mellon, MIT, Berkeley, and Stanford. The replays of these talks are mostly available on Youth AI YouTube channel, with the exception of a couple talks which are not available on YouTube due to company policy. And I'll briefly talk about our last talk before handing it off to Melinda. In the last talk, Dr. Joelle from McGill University in Montreal discussed the main areas of AI research: computer vision, dialogue, touch and interaction, generative models, and self-supervised learning that will influence the development of the metaverse and what it really means in terms of application. You're welcome to watch the replay of this great talk at our YouTube channel, which I will link right now in the chat.
And we have a very exciting announcement for our upcoming talk. So with the new year, we, along with our distinguished speaker series, we at Youth AI Lab wanted to also bring our audience a new speaker series. So in addition to our distinguished speaker series, we are very excited to announce the kickoff of our new youth speaker series that will be beginning with a talk from Dr. Yang Song in March. So the date is yet to be set for that. So please, if you are interested in learning more, we suggest you register at our website or follow us on our Eventbrite in order to receive updates regarding that. So for Dr. Yan Song working at OpenAI, which he may most commonly known to be associated with the very famous and exciting ChatGPT. And he is also an upcoming assistant professor at Caltech and won an outstanding paper award in 2021. and he has an Apple PhD fellowship in AI and ML and a JP Morgan PhD fellowship, and as well as a WAIC Rising Star Award. So definitely we have really exciting things planned for our upcoming talks. So to briefly explain the schedule of our Distinguished Speaker Series versus our Youth Speaker Series, they will be English Speaker Series talk this month for February with Mr. Les Schmidt, and then the next one will be a youth talk. And so for the Youth Speaker Series, we wanted to give our audience a chance, as you guys are mostly comprised of young students who are mostly just getting into AI. We wanted to give everyone an opportunity to also get in contact with like-minded young speakers as well. Speaker series will be featuring younger speakers who are just making their way into the industry and have accomplishments that are definitely very noteworthy. So it's definitely a really good opportunity for you to get in contact with those who are a little younger in the industry and may have really interesting insight on how you also would be able to apply that knowledge to your career or your journey in artificial intelligence and what you decide to do. So definitely I recommend checking that talk out. The Eventbrite is yet to be updated, but the free registration will be on our Eventbrite. So please sign up in order to receive updates on that. And so now before introducing Mr. Les Schmidt, I'd like to briefly go over the logistics of the talk. So as we have an audience watching from our YouTube live stream, as well as on Zoom, we'll be doing Q&A through a platform called Slido. So you can either go to the URL that is about to be posted in the chat, or you can go to Slido and enter the event code 12358 questions in a Q&A session at the end of Mr. Schmidt's talk. So be sure to stick around to get your questions answered. So now, what everyone has been waiting for, let me introduce today's speaker, Mr. Les Schmidt. So Mr. Les Schmidt is a world-renowned entrepreneur and leader. Currently, Mr. Schmidt is the executive director and co-founder of BRIA, the Intelligent Accelerator. He founded the early-stage startup accelerator and built an entrepreneurial ecosystem that supports AI ML-powered startups that are creating business-to-business solutions by assisting upcoming entrepreneurs. Additionally, Mr. Schmidt is working with large global. An example of his current work is a project to help Sony take their Blu-ray technology to space. So today, our brilliant speaker, Mr. Schmidt, will share his experience and thoughts as an internationally recognized startup leader, entrepreneur, as well as a member in the industry at the intersection of artificial intelligence and entrepreneurship. So let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Schmidt.
Great, thank you, Melinda and Maddie. I'm going to start share my screen here, get that detail taken care of, and we will be on our way. So, well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. And it's really a pleasure and an honor to be asked to be a part of this group. I wish when I was a young student in college or in high school that I had the access to resources and the opportunities that you all have in terms of thinking about how to make big changes in the world using technology. And AI is such an incredible tool, and it's delighted to be speaking to a knowledgeable audience about who already knows about AI, so I don't have to explain that. But what I am going to talk about is how the bits of AI and the bits of entrepreneurship actually make for a great opportunity. And this is a very near and dear subject to me, obviously, because I started an accelerator about it. But let's get into it. So first off, I want to make sure that you know who you're speaking with or who is speaking to you. I think it's always important to kind of have the credibility of the person that you're speaking with be known so that you can evaluate the qualifications and understand the context in which I'm bringing to the table. So first of all, I have had a very multifaceted career. I have been a jack of many trades and a master of only a few. And those few happen to involve entrepreneurship as the recurring theme throughout. I have had experiences in Fortune 500 companies, Adobe in particular, where we worked with telecom operators around the world to create really nice phones up until 2007 when the iPhone came out. And the iPhone was actually the phone that we were trying to help operators create using Adobe Flash technology. And when the iPhone came out, everybody said, that's what we need to be doing. And so the business shifted away from that. But I had a lot of global experiences, and it was great to kind of interact with different cultures and different businesses around the world. And then most of my career, I have been a part of leading 7 startups, either as CEO or COO, and then advising and investing and being involved in many others. The companies on the right are the ones that I actually was employed by as CEO or COO. The Learning Company was an educational software. Quokka Sports was in sports media. Global English was in global language learning for Fortune 2500 companies around the world. The others are in music media and developer tools and healthcare information systems and a biomedical device. So you can see that none of them are the same. But what I learned from those 7 experiences is that the journey of entrepreneurship, the journey of taking an idea, bringing it to market, finding customers, and building a sustainable business is very similar no matter what industry you happen to be in or what industry you happen to focus on. And I'll explain more about what I mean by there's a lot of similarities. What I like to say is the movie is the same, but the backdrop is different. And so if you think about all the videos that you've seen and just kind of change the backdrop from outer space to current present Earth in the Rocky Mountains or ocean-going vessels, all 3 of those have different backgrounds, but the journey of getting to each of those is a trial unto itself that has a lot of similarities. So, and then the last part of my journey is I've been advising large companies, both in developing entrepreneurial programs for them, as well as to help them take technologies to market. And for you young entrepreneurs, don't be fooled by big names and big companies, because actually they know just about as much about entrepreneurship as you do. Big companies get very set in their ways, and they forget actually how to bring a product to market fast, how to iterate fast, how to fail fast, and how to really understand how you start from nothing to build something, because they're always coming from a place of not taking too much risk as part of being a big company. So all of these experiences together, I call are my 30-year degree. Now, hopefully it won't take all of you that long to earn your degree in entrepreneurship and AI, but it has been a valuable journey and one that I've learned a lot from. And I've taken all of that experience and applied it to building Bria, which is as previously announced, a B2B SaaS software for AI-powered startups. We are headquartered in the Bay Area in San Francisco, but we serve entrepreneurs all over the world because our programs are mostly in the virtual space. So with that experience, I bring to this subject tonight of entrepreneurship and artificial intelligence. And it's an incredible opportunity. The intersection of these 2 things are an incredible opportunity that few people really understand why they belong so well together. And so we're going to explore a number of different aspects to it. And it's kind of the who, what, when, where of building a business in the AI space, So the first thing we're going to look at is, why is it a good idea to start an AI-powered business, number 1. Number 2 is we're going to look at what customers want to see from the products that you might be building with AI. Third, we're going to look at where the opportunities are in terms of industries for AI businesses and AI startups. We're going to look a little bit at tools and resources that are available to get a startup off the ground. And then we're going to look at how best to build an AI business. And building a business is different than building a product. And I'll make that distinction again later on in the presentation. And then finally, we'll look at a few challenges that also face AI startups, just like there are many challenges that face startups in general, but there's a few that are peculiar to AI startups that I thought might be relevant to all of you. And during the process, I'll also share some examples of companies that have graduated from our startup accelerator. And so you get a sense of what an AI company actually looks like. So first of all, what are the reasons why you should build an AI business? Well, there's fundamentally three, okay? The first is they're just incredible frontiers in the AI space, AI entrepreneurship space. There are so many problems that our tiny little human brains are incapable of solving without the aid of additional tools and resources. And oddly enough, AI, even though AI evokes many different emotions for different people, AI is a tool that actually extends what we know deeper into the real world. And I'll give you an example. As you may know, recently, DeepMind, a company in the UK, recently predicted with a high degree of accuracy what a protein is going to fold into. Now, and that's a little bit complicated, but basically imagine you have a string of unidentified of amino acids that has a natural tendency to fold into a useful structure in the biology world. Well, it turns out that there are there are many amino acids and many proteins in the world, but the number of possibilities of what one strand of amino acid can fold into is 10 to the 300th power. So what that means is multiply 10 by itself 300 times, and the number that you get is the number that 100 amino acids, the possible number of structures. And they've now predicted the possible structures for every string of amino acid in the human body. It is an incredibly masterful use of AI to break through a amount of data that we as humans could not have possibly done with pen and paper or any of the other tools prior to the tools that exist today. So it's really, we live in an incredible opportunistic time. And so when you're thinking about, if you're thinking about developing an AI startup, you should think about all the possibilities, maybe not just the one that you're thinking about today, because there are, in fact, many. The second reason why AI has such incredible potential is because we are living in a time when we've got a kit of tools and storage and computing power that we have not had even 5 or 6 years ago. This is a dawn of a new age, given the confluence of a number of things that simply did not exist in the recent past. So you're living at a great time. Oops, sorry, a little jumping around here. Here we go, we'll catch up. And then the third reason why you might want to develop an AI startup is because it is a competitive advantage. If you build your company right using AI, we believe that you will have an outsized opportunity to exceed the competition and have a sustainable business for a very long time. And I'm going to explain that in some detail in later. Okay, so those are the reasons why you should build an AI business. Okay, now we have to think about what is it, if we build an AI business, what is it that customers are going to want from the products that we build with AI? Well, first of all, the answer is in part, customers want the same things they want from every other product. Customers will buy generally for 4 reasons. One is because your product will help them make money. The second is because your product will help them save money. The third is because your product will help them gain a competitive advantage. Or 4, your product will actually help them comply with laws or navigate risks that are associated with their business better than the other. So this applies to all startups, but these are pretty general. So let's get to the specifics of what does it mean when you're building an AI startup. You have to have one of these. You have to have a product that's going to do one of these things for your customer, but then you also have to kind of go further. And you have to think about the problem that you solve. The ideal problem for AI is a problem that people thought they couldn't solve with existing tools. These are wide open spaces. So think about the protein folding. We couldn't do that before. That solved a new problem. And that, therefore, becomes a much more valuable product. Now, AI can be used to do some things faster, slightly better, et cetera, and that's okay too. But if it's only 10% better or 15% better, then most likely that's not going to be enough for customers to abandon their current solution and adopt your solution. And so what we want to see, the second point here, is that if you are going to use AI to improve efficiency, to help people save money and do things faster, do things more efficiently, then you really want to look at a threshold of at least a 40% improvement over what they are doing, what they're using today. Okay, so AI can be used first to solve a brand new problem, secondly, to improve an existing problem, but by a lot. And then the third and the fourth items on this slide are things that are unique to AI businesses. When you have AI, lots of people have their own opinions and their own misconceptions about what AI is going to do with their data, with their products, with the materials that you're going to use in your product, et cetera. And so you have to build a higher degree of trustworthiness and transparency than you might if you were just selling ice cream, for instance. People know what ice cream is. There isn't a lot of hidden magic behind ice cream. People just know that your particular ice cream is really good. When you're selling an AI product, people don't know how you got it. People don't understand what magic you pulled behind the scenes, and therefore there's a lot more suspicion. And as a startup entrepreneur, one of the things that you have to do in every interaction you have with a customer is to build that trust and to reinforce the transparency. Then lastly, and one of the big mantras that we have in our startup accelerator is that if you're going to build a product, it has to be different, not better. And here's why. Okay, you're not meant to read this. This is the map of big data companies in 2021, and there's thousands of companies' logos on this page, and they're in groups in the big data area, from infrastructure groups to like databases. There's cybersecurity companies in the AI space. There's data lakes. There's tools for developers. There's applications for enterprise. There's applications for specific industries. And all of these have many, many players already in the industry. And so if you're going to start a company today, if you're the entrepreneur using AI to crack some new unknown problem, you can pretty much bet that somebody else is probably trying to solve that same problem. And what you have to do is to be different, not better. You have to understand the needs of your customer in a way that very few will take the time to do, and to solve that missing problem in a very unique way. That's the only way that you can compete in this landscape. Now, here's a few things not to do as we're talking about products, AI products that you're going to deliver to customers. One of the first things that you should not do is basically just say, my product will help you do X 10% better. As we talked before, 10% is not enough. And if it's AI, people actually expect AI to do much better than 10%. So you're selling yourself short if you start to talk about your product, or your product only makes a 10% improvement. Another challenge that AI entrepreneurs often have is if they develop a model or a tool, they'll look at the tool and they'll say, well, I could use this in healthcare. I could use it in agriculture. I could use it in fintech. And they then kind of come to the conclusion that their product could do anything. Well, the truth is that from a customer perspective, Very few buyers buy a tool that does everything. Most people, if they're looking for a solution, they want to know that your tool can solve their problem. That is one problem, the way you talk about your product and the way you talk about your solution should be totally focused on helping them solve that one problem. So if you are developing an AI tool, be careful about that slippery slope of saying, I have a tool that will work for everybody, because it'll be very hard to find customers when you're first starting out. The third thing is you don't want to compare your product to somebody that already has an existing product in the marketplace. So if you say, I'm just like X, well, then then everybody's going to start comparing you to what X does versus what you do. And again, that puts you in the slot of being compared with an existing product as opposed to being a different product in the marketplace. And then the last thing, and this is maybe counterintuitive, is that saying your product is built with AI is generally not a good thing, because people have their own opinions about AI. They want to know, what does that mean? And they won't accept it just because you say it's AI. In other words, solve the problem with your product that the customer wants solved, and keep the fact that it uses AI to solve that problem to yourself. All right, let's look at some opportunities and some of the industries that are basically looking for, or have the most opportunities for AI-powered startups. And there's actually 10. And they're all here on the slide, from education, energy, healthcare, fintech. They're probably all industries that you might have expected to be on this slide. But the one question you might be asking is, what is the commonality? Like, maybe there's an 11 or a 12 or a 13, 14, 15 industry that's not on this slide. How should I be thinking about them as ripe for AI products or not? And the truth is that the common thread through all those 10 industries is that they are very data rich, that they have a need for instant answers. So think about healthcare. If you're going to use a lot of data to come to a decision, they want it fast. And so developing a product that brings the power of AI and all of the data for that particular decision together quickly is a very good thing for the healthcare industry. The same thing is true in cybersecurity. You want to know quickly, if your data has been breached, or if there is a risk to the way that you've set up your services, et cetera. So these are the reasons that you want to think about, or these are the criteria you want to think about if you're thinking about an AI product for a particular industry. Does the industry have a lot of data? Do they need answers quickly? Is the scalability of your solution important to your customers? And then, are you solving a problem that is basically new and beyond our current human capacity? Okay, let's take a quick look at the tools available. And when you're developing a product, when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you're basically looking at 4 groups of tools. And these are the tools that you probably know pretty well: computer vision and deep learning, natural language processing, predictive analytics, machine learning. These are the big buckets. Beneath each of these, there are specialty tools that do things for a particular aspect of AI. So there are some things that are better processing text for natural language processing, others that are better honed to processing images for deep learning, et cetera. And when I mentioned at the outset that this is a great time to be developing a company, is because there's just tons and tons of resources that are free and available, if not nearly free. And then there's also, of course, powerful tools that you can pay for. One of our mentors in our accelerator was actually on the board of directors of Data Robot and did a demonstration of Data Robot. And imagine, if you will, you take a spreadsheet of 50,000 rows of data about a particular kind of customer. It doesn't really matter, but it's 50,000 rows and 42 columns. And you basically upload it to a machine, and within 20 minutes, that machine will tell you what the important relationships are among the bits of data that you have in that spreadsheet. It's very, very impressive to see these tools in action today. But you can build lots of tools on your own using the free resources here and many, many others, probably that you've talked about in some of your other sessions as well. All right, let's talk about how now you build your business. Now, one of the things that we talk about in our accelerator is you're actually, when you're an entrepreneur, you're actually building two products. Product number one is the product that you sell to your customers. That's the AI-powered software or other tools that you're selling to your customers. The other product that you're building is your company. And the way that you build your company is just as important as the way that you build your AI-powered product. And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, you want to think about constructing your company in a way that you have recurring revenue. Recurring revenue is so powerful because you don't have to go recruit new customers every year. You can build on the customers you already have and then add new customers to it. And when you do that with SaaS, that means that all of your resources are in the cloud so that you can have variable resources as you scale the business. And that's very efficient from a capital perspective. And then the last thing that you can do in your business and the way that you construct your business is really think about using not just one data set in the construction of your product, but actually use multiple data sets. In the multiple data sets, you actually combine unique data and unique insights that are very hard for others to replicate. So what's shown here, for instance, is combining weather data with actual farming data. So weather data with sensors in the ground of how much moisture there is can predict and tell you how much to water. If your yields are low, perhaps it was correlated to weather events that were beyond your control, but you wouldn't know that unless you had the data from both sets to understand that. So combining data sets, using a SaaS model, and getting recurring revenue are all three great ways to build a business that is very, very valuable. Now, I mentioned up front that one of the reasons we like AI businesses is because you have a competitive advantage. And this goes to the network effect of data. And this is, again, a way that you build your business makes it more valuable than if you choose other ways. If you build your business in such a way that when you deliver your product to your customer and your customer uses the product, you get additional data and insights, then the next customer that uses your product is even going to get a better product than the first customer did. In other words, the data builds on itself. The product gets smarter. Your customers like it because every time they use it, it seems to know more about their business. That, if you build that kind of a business, that's very hard for a new business to compete with. Why? Because you have all the learning and you have all the data and you have all the customer relationships that you've honed over the period of time that you've been selling your product to your customers. So selling a business or selling a product that is giving you data at the same time is a very valuable business. What's the classic example of a business that does this? Autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles are intaking video from multiple cameras every day, every time they drive. And if this video can be used and harnessed to train models for future drivers and future cars, then the ramp and the speed with which those cars get smarter and smarter is much, much higher. And this is part of the advantage that Tesla has, just being the first to really go down the path of thinking about autonomous vehicles and autonomous driving. So think about your business of how you can acquire data and keep it learning and keep it reinforcing the product that you built. Okay, I mentioned there were a few challenges. With every startup, there's of course some challenges, but with AI businesses, there are some unique ones. First of all, you have to really go beyond data. And I love this little diagram at the top because in a few short frames, it basically says a lot. On the left-hand side, where you mostly started, you have data. You just have a bunch of data. And it doesn't really tell you anything until you start to give it some labels, or in the information box, they give it some colors. When you know what that piece of data means, then you start to have more meaning in the data. You start to get knowledge when you start attaching pieces of data to each other. When this goes up, this goes down. When you understand the relationship between those two pieces of data, then you start to have some knowledge. But you don't really get to insight until you understand which of those relationships actually is more important than others. And so the yellow dots here identify the couple of relationships or a couple of data points that have the biggest importance. And then you have wisdom when you know that changing a particular data point actually has the following effects through the rest of the data set. And that's when you have that knowledge, then you can start to impact the world around you. But there's a lot of these steps are sequential and are repetitive as you build a AI business. And so it takes a little bit longer than a product that you just publish once and do it, because every time you get fresh new data, you're basically back at the beginning of this curve, working that data to the point where you actually start to get the wisdom and the insights that are valuable to your customers. Okay, and at the bottom, then you also have to think about, as you're building your business, can I acquire the data fast enough? There are certain industries, and education is my favorite, that just move slow. It's just going to be a very long time before you can actually have data that will impact some of the major challenges that face educational institutions. So imagine you want to track a certain kind of program for high school seniors, and you want to see what the impact is of that program over a lifetime of a particular student. Well, when do you get that data? You get that data in not weeks or days or months, but in years following the delivery of the program. And so it's very difficult to build that business case that your program has a particular impact because you won't be able to measure it for many, many years after that. So you have to be aware when you're putting together your company are you going to be able to acquire the right data fast enough? Those are two important considerations. The second challenge of AI-powered startups is, are you creating something that's a nice to have or something that's really going to solve a problem? And some people would say, well, just recommending products is a nice to have, but it's critical actually for an e-commerce provider. An e-commerce provider actually has to have a recommendation engine. Otherwise, they miss out on something like 15 to 20% additional sales that their competitors are doing. So if you're providing a recommendation engine to e-commerce, that's a painkiller. But if you're providing a nice way to display pictures on the e-commerce site, that might just be a vitamin. It might be a nice to have, but it might not drive business decisions. So really think about whether or not the product you're building is actually going to have a major impact on the businesses that you serve. The third thing that is often underestimated, and this is very hard to imagine as you're a young student and not yet in the business world, but building the right team is probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do. That is not only the right team from a chemistry point of view, but the right team from an expertise point of view, and evolving that team as your business grows. So what happens is in many early startups, there are some people that have great talents for the very earliest stages of startups, but those great talents actually aren't the talents you need when you become a more mature company and you're selling revenue. And so managing the team all the time, it takes just about as much effort as it does to manage your product. And it's really important to focus on that at the early days. And then the last thing that really is challenging for AI-powered startups is this whole matter of ethics. And we mentioned it before in terms of building trust and transparency, but there are so many decisions where you have to make a decision about, is the data good enough to make the decisions that you're going to ask your clients to make as a result of the insights that you provide. So the classic is, of course, the autonomous car that is confronted with a challenging situation where they have a choice to drive the car off the road, perhaps with damage to people or people or property, or to actually hit a pedestrian or to do some other damage. And we as humans make decisions in a nanosecond and sometimes make the wrong decisions, sometimes make the right decisions. But if you're building data systems to make those decisions for humans, you have a higher degree of responsibility than if you were just building a product that would predict the weather, if you will. So just be thinking about how you build a lot of trust and transparency into whatever product you build, and keep the ethical standards high in the process. All right, let me shift to a few examples from companies from our accelerator. The first one is a company called Wordly, and I'll explain a little bit of what the company does and what AI tools and technologies they use, and then tell you a little bit about the company. So Wordly started out as a company that provided instant translation for a seminar, actually not like this, usually in a real world. At a conference, there would be a speaker at the front speaking in one language, and then there would be a multi-language, multicultural audience. And if you didn't have the speaker's language as your first language, then you probably had a set of headphones and you were listening to a translator in the back of the room to translate the speaker's words in real time in your earpiece. Well, Wordly automated all of that using natural language processing. And they put an audio connection to the mic of the person that's speaking and automatically, instantly translate the spoken word into 16 languages that appear as text on your phone or in your or audio in your earpiece. And you can choose, I'm listening to French, I can choose German, I can choose Russian, I can choose Hindu. At any time during the thing, you can change your language and listen to a different translation. And so it eliminated a lot of the lag, and it also gave people a much more personal experience and connection to the speaker. So this is what it looks like. Basically one speaker, many listeners, and instant translation. And just recently, they added a new technology, which is neural voices. If you haven't read about this, it basically is technology that AI technology that makes what used to be sounding, totally computer voice. You could tell it was a computer the instant you heard it. Now that voice actually sounds much more like a human, and so it's much easier to listen to and easier to understand. So that's a business that went through the BRIA Accelerator and is now successfully raising a Series A. So they're moving up in the world. Another company that just recently graduated from our program is a company called MPAC, and they're using computer vision to recognize pieces of equipment in the energy world. And what happens in the energy world is if you are a building owner and you have a energy boiler room like this that heats your building and you want to upgrade it, well, the first thing you have to do is to audit what is there. And auditing what's there often means reading some very difficult to read serial numbers and labels, or you see this very long string of numbers at the bottom of the screen here, and somebody used to have to go and write all those numbers down and then take it back to the office and then look up that part number. And they do all of this with computer vision. They can instantly recognize the label, connect it to data about the piece of equipment, understand all of the metrics and the attributes of that piece of equipment, and makes the whole process of being able to get to the benefit, which is moving forward in a greener, sustainable, energy efficient environment more quickly. And remember what I said about not doing 10% better and doing at least 40% better? Well, they have studied the process of the engineers that use their tool, and compared to the previous tool, they are 50 to 80% faster. by using AI in this business process. So this is an example of using AI for more efficiency. And then the last one I'll share with you is one that many people don't know what things exist behind the streets that we are below the streets that we drive on, et cetera. But there's a lot of sewer pipes. And when sewer pipes break, it's a big mess. It's a big smelly mess. And so the way to prevent big smelly messes is to inspect the pipes. And the way that pipes were inspected previously is that two people were on the back of a truck, and they would feed a camera on a cable down the pipe, and the camera would have a lens on it. And when the driver would see something that they wanted to inspect, the camera would stop and look around, and then the person that was driving the camera would say, oh, that's a condition 234 at 15 feet 3 inches, and then log it in a database and with all those metrics. Well, sewer AI said, well, that's kind of silly. Why don't we just have the computer recognize the defects and log all that data instantly? And so instead of having to drive, stop, enter data, the camera just drives, and they're able to inspect 500 times more pipe in a day than they were doing it by the operators on the back of a truck. And what they're using the vision for, I mean, here's an example of kind of what you see in a pipe, but things like cracks, and then things like tree roots growing into the pipe. And some of these are minor problems and won't be fixed right away, but at least they'll know they're there and they can keep a close eye on it. And what you see in the squares is the confidence level that they have that what they're seeing is indeed a crack or is indeed roots. So they can identify roots with 96% accuracy, cracks with 90% accuracy. So those are just some of the companies that have gone through the program. And I'll leave you just with one thing, which is let's talk a little bit about the future of AI. Sometimes people think about, well, is AI a fad? Is it, here and now, and then we're going to move on to something else? And is it going to go away? Or is, it's just like it's a lot of hype and there's not much there. And there's one reason why I believe that AI is going to be around for a long time, and it's going to be a very important tool. And therefore, starting an AI-powered business is a good thing. And that reason is data. If you look at the amount of data that we are digitally creating and storing, it is increasing enormously and faster as time goes on. So just to put this in perspective a little bit, so we're somewhere between 2020 and 2025, and between those years, it's going to increase about 4 times the amount of data in that 5-year period, okay? And about 4 times in the next period, 5 periods as well, but multiplying every 5 years by 4 is going to be a big number. And this chart is in zettabytes. Now, if you don't know what a zettabyte is a billion terabytes. And if you don't know what a billion terabytes is, think about it this way. So think about a 1 terabyte hard drive, and it would take a billion 1 terabyte hard drives to store 1 zettabyte. And if you stack all those together, the amount of distance would cover would be halfway to the sun. Okay, so it is an enormous amount of data. That's 1 zettabyte. And the prediction is in 2035, we'll be producing 2,142 zettabytes in that year. So the enormous amount of data gives rise to an enormous amount of opportunities when you have tools like AI to help parse what they are and make products that are beneficial to solving those problems that we simply can't as human beings. That's the presentation.
Okay, fantastic. Oh, I think I'm having an echo.
Yes.
That is unfortunate. Give me 1 second to fix that. Okay, it should be fixed now. Okay, aside from that mishap, thank you, Mr. Schmidt, for the fantastic talk. Definitely some really important insights shared on the associations and connections between AI and entrepreneurship that I think many people, like you mentioned, there are lots of misconceptions within those intersections, even among professionals. So I think this is definitely a really important thing for those who are curious in artificial intelligence, or maybe even more specifically in the connections between business, entrepreneurship, and AI, and what they can do with that in their future career. And so I think now, perfect. The slide is also perfect. So since it's a good segue into our Q&A session for today. So for those who have joined during the talk just now, so we will be sending out a link if you have not received it already to our Q&A platform, which is Slido. And so we will be pasting the link in the chat again for those who have just joined us. So if you have any questions for Mr. Schmidt, feel free to ask them via this platform. And so in the meantime, I can see that we already have some questions in the Slido. So to introduce those. So first off, we have a question from Sean Wu. And so he's asking, I think this is a fantastic question that is applicable to all of the audience members listening. So for students attempting entrepreneurship with AI, where do we start? He asks. So how do we better understand consumer needs, and what are some promising fields to look at?
Great question. And what's good about the question is it's starting with the right end, which is to ask what customers need. What does the market need? Now, there's a tiny step before that, which is usually an invention. In other words, there's usually an idea that you think that a problem you'd like to solve, that maybe you've experienced personally, you've seen other people experience it, and say that shouldn't be. We should fix that problem, because innovation starts with the entrepreneur. In other words, innovations don't start when you go ask customers what do they want. And the classic, of course, is if you'd asked people that drove horse and buggies, what do you want? They would have said a faster horse. They wouldn't have said a car. Okay. And so you really want to be thinking about what problem you want to solve, what problem you are uniquely equipped to solve, and how you might go about that, and then take that hypothesis and test it with customers who might want to buy it. And talking to customers is the most direct way. There's actually a whole science about how you might construct that interview. I don't think we have time to kind of go into that today. But your instinct to go to the market is the right instinct as the place to start.
Okay, that's a great answer. Thank you so much. And I think, I kind of have a question of my own. So are there any risks in having an artificial-based company that aren't present with non-AI company? I guess you would call them that. Because you mentioned building an ethical AI program. So I wonder if there are other responsibilities that that AI programs need to have. For example, how would AI, mistakes that AI programs make, be held accountable versus mistakes that maybe are caused by human errors? Right?
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of these questions are not yet answered. What we are in is we're in the dawn of a new industry, and usually in those new industries, there isn't a lot of regulation yet. So there isn't a lot of guidance about what you have to do, what you don't have to do, or whose responsibility is it. And so the burden, I would say, is on the entrepreneur to assume that it is their responsibility to make decisions in a way that is first transparent, so that they are, and traceable, so that if a decision that goes wrong is made, there's a way to go back and find out why it was made that way. So that traceability in the AI model is important. And then secondly is, if you know going in that this is a high risk output or a high risk consequence that might happen as a result of using your product, then what you might want to do is not put that feature in, right? Until you have the right level of confidence. And this is where judgment's involved. This is where it's very challenging to know exactly where the line is until it gets crossed and unfortunate things happen. So you want to stay as much as you can on the safe side. But if it's absolutely critical, then taking that risk, going beyond what you think is safe and disclosing it to your customers, saying, hey, this is what I think this product 90% of the time is going to predict this, and it's going to do it right. But this 10% of the time could have some consequences. Are you okay with that? And being upfront with your customers about that is really important. If you look at the disclosures that ChatGPT has, I think they are in some respects a model for what needs to be done for any kind of major AI application, to say, here's what I'm good at, here's what I'm not good at, and here's what you shouldn't use it for.
I think that's actually really interesting, specifically with ChatGPT, because I've been using it lately. And so I like that they actually put what things that it can't do. Like, for instance, it mentions that they're unable to find information past 2021, which is a pretty good disclaimer, and that not everything that it might output is necessarily correct or accurate. So definitely that's a really good point. And I think going off of Maddie's question about mentioning ethical AI, we have another question asking from an anonymous individual. Does setting out ethics rules inhibit an AI startup? Is their question.
Yeah, I don't think it has to. I don't think it has to. I mean, unless you're in an area where there's just a high number of ethical issues in everything you do. But most of the applications, particularly in B2B, you're solving a problem that is about a business process. You're solving a problem that is about an opportunity to create a new product that is, probably in the same domain as what the company already knows. So you're not really tiptoeing into areas that are high degree of ethics kind of considerations. Now, if you're doing, for instance, if you were creating a product that was doing social counseling or psychology or things like that, where you might be giving advice to people and telling them based on what they've told you what they should do, if you're giving direct advice like that, that's a much higher risk, and you shouldn't do that, obviously without having some real expertise on your team. Number one, and number two is making sure that, again, that the users of your technology know what parameters you've set around your AI. In other words, what it's good at, what it's not good at, and what data sets it has had to learn from, to train from, and what data sets it hasn't had from. And it's often the latter, the lack of data in certain sets that give data sets bias, right? Because if you only train it on successful outcomes, and you don't have any of the unsuccessful outcomes, when you get the unsuccessful ones that are different but could be successful for different reasons, you will automatically categorize them as not fitting the model. And you want to constantly be aware of where you're introducing bias by not only what you put in, but what you leave out.
Okay, so next we have another question by Sean, and he kind of refers to the slide that we talked about, like business challenges with data. Could you give more examples or some more examples of challenges in real business?
Okay, so the challenges being the lack of data or not getting data fast enough. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. So the lack of data. So first of all, depending on what you're trying to do, you will not be able to say with high confidence what outcome you're providing to your customer until you have a lot of data. So here's an example of a startup that was really struggled in our program. Imagine you're a homeowner or a plumber, and you go to a home, and it's an older home, and you have a faucet that's broken. And how do you know who the manufacturer is, what year it is, what model it is, and where am I going to get the parts? most faucets in particular have very few identifying marks. And so what our company was doing was going to a plumbing parts vendor and saying, give me all of your images of your products so that I can make an app for plumbers that will instantly recognize the images in the real world. The problem is that the manufacturer's data is, I'll call it pure. It's a faucet pictured against a white background in a perfect position. You can see all the parts. When you go to take the photo in the field, the faucet is on a black countertop, and there's a bunch of other stuff around it that isn't related to the faucet. And the faucet isn't the same color because it's tarnished. And so you have all these factors in the field that you don't have in the data set that you got from the manufacturer. Well, how long is it going to take you to go recognize all of the different conditions there are in the field so that you can have high confidence that every time a plumber takes a photo of a faucet, they're actually going to get the right faucet? It's going to take a very, very long time because the conditions in the real world are almost infinite. Does that make sense?
I think the faucet analogy is actually very interesting because a lot of times it's a really good point to make that not everything is the same as you might experience in, like for instance, another analogy would be like in a testing room, right? Testing room versus real life would be the open-ended side of that. So I think that's a really interesting point to make and to consider as well when making applications in a controlled environment versus in real life.
Right. And it's actually very similar. I might just add is, even companies, startup companies, when they sell their product to their first or second customer, right? And they've built the product a certain way, they give it to the customer and they say, well, that's great, but it doesn't work on these things. You need to fix this, this, and this. So they go back and fix that. And then they say, oh, great, now we got a perfect product. We'll go sell it to customer number 3. And that customer, again, has a completely different setup and is still not the same result that they were able to achieve with the first customer because the conditions in the real world are different. And real world conditions is often what challenges data sets. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think especially in the industry from lab to market, it's really important to consider.
Yeah.
And so we have another question. So we have a question from Shrikar. So their question is, as there is a high threat of substitutes in this industry, how should one plan to evolve in the long run and in a timely manner?
Yeah, substitutes in terms of alternative ways to do things, or?
I believe so. In like, for instance, in the industry, there are lots of companies who might be trying to aim for the same thing. So I assume that is what they mean.
Yes. Yeah. So in the startup world, the best antidote to lots of competition is high rates of execution, meaning moving fast, right? And that's sometimes counter to all the other things that we were talking about before, which is the care you need to take in terms of building your models and that sort of thing. But it's the reason why that the data acquisition challenge was on that slide. Because if you can't acquire the data fast enough and somebody can acquire it faster, then you lose ground, really quickly. So high execution rate, evolving with customer needs, at a fast rate, and acquiring the raw inputs to your models and to your decision-making tools quickly is really important to kind of sustaining that competitive edge.
Right. And would you actually say that, I actually have a follow-up question quickly, but would you actually say that, like, if you were to, like, going for speed, does that sacrifice the actual quality, would you say?
No, I wasn't suggesting that, if that's what you heard. No, I'm saying those are the tensions, though, that are in the early business. Is that you want to move fast, but if that means sacrificing quality, then you're going to have to make the important decisions. This is where the ethics, do come in. Is do I move fast and know it's not complete, or it's going to make provide some wrong insights to my customers, or do I wait a little longer until I have more data? And this is playing out in the real world. ChatGPT gets announced. Google comes along and says, well, we're announcing Bard, but we're not going to release it yet because we don't think it has enough quality yet, right? And so you're seeing these decisions play out in real time in our day today.
So kind of on the same idea, but not really. Sorry, there's a different question from an anonymous user that asks, how does an AI startup maintain flexibility when the industry and technology is always accelerating so fast and the foundations are always changing? I think you kind of answered this with how the company evolves in a long run, timely manner. But as we mentioned, like, we see how Apple maybe or Google respond to these constantly adapting or changing times. So how would a startup per se, instead of like a big company like Google or Apple, maintain such flexibility?
Yeah. There's kind of two different answers. One is, my mantra for startups is always be learning. You have to keep a weather eye to what's happening in the marketplace and adapting and responding to things that happen in the competitive world. And you should be able to, as a startup, actually move more quickly than bigger organizations. That should be one of your competitive advantages, is the degree to which and the speed with which you can change. At the same time, the antidote to having to move that quickly to all the changes is focus. And if you are focused on a particular company or customer's problem, then providing the solution for that customer is the most important thing. And what's happening in the technology world in general is less important in terms of bringing together the solution that you're trying to bring together for that customer. That said, if there are competitive forces that are using newer technologies than yours, then yes, you've got to move quickly to adapt the new capabilities.
Definitely. I think there are lots of factors that come in building a company. So it's very, very good that everyone has the opportunity to hear you discuss all of them in depth.
Yep.
And so I think, so another question that we have from the audience is, so we have someone, so we actually have an answer for this as well, but of course we want to hear Mr. Schmidt's answer for this first. So we have someone asking, I am completely a newbie in this area. So how do I get started if I want to build some AI powered tools to learn?
Yeah, I think there's many free courses that are out there, and I myself, when I first got into data science and AI took a 10 course at Johns Hopkins online, totally online, and it was a terrific course. Andrew Ning was part of the faculty at that point, and there are plenty of good resources out there. You can quickly get overwhelmed, so you have to kind of find the right level of entry-level course, but I'd highly recommend kind of going that route just to say to get a structured view of it. And then the next best thing is, people will say, yeah, just get some tools and play around with them, and that's good. But I think the most important thing is to have in mind a problem or a set of data that you're trying to understand, right? Have something that you're passionate about, have something that is top of mind for you, that is of interest, because otherwise you're not going to be able to sustain your interest through learning all this new stuff, because there's a ton of stuff to learn. I mean, they're just, and daily there's terminology, there's different models, different approaches. Everybody's got their own idea about what things are important, what things aren't, and so sifting through all that's going to be mind-numbing unless you have that staying power of saying, okay, I want to figure out whatever your particular problem is, and staying focused on that.
Definitely. And I think I really also agree with Mr. Schmidt's point about a lot of some of the online courses being a bit convoluted. You have to definitely do some searching to find the right one for you and your skill level. So I suppose we at Youth AI Lab, we'd also recommend that I think one thing that you're doing well already, not necessarily specifically with AI tools, but also just learning in the AI field in general, is the fact that you're here today, listening to this talk, listening to Mr. Schmidt's webinar. And I think that's already a really fantastic start if you're really just trying to gain some knowledge. I'd also recommend we have some resources on our website that are updated regularly. So I do recommend checking that out, because those are curated resources that we found to be simpler for some novices. And we also have them listed by intermediate or more advanced courses as well. So that's also my recommendation as someone from Youth AI Lab.
Perfect.
And kind of pivoting from the topic of trying to learn AI, and back to maybe about the AI powered businesses, do you see any environmental effects, maybe like either benefits or negative consequences of AI based businesses versus non-AI?
Yeah, it's not the same thing as crypto, that's for sure. Yeah, there are computing resources that are required for AI businesses, no doubt. But AI businesses are also some of the most distributed businesses, and because it's all about software, and you can basically develop software anywhere in the world. So you're not on the road commuting, and you're not spewing out carbon from the cars or any other form of transportation that you might be using. So there's some offsets kind of thing. But I think in general, there aren't any extra untoward benefits, untoward consequences, let me put it that way, climate consequences from starting an AI business.
Definitely. And I think another question, I know we're a bit over time, and we do see quite a lot of questions, which is very good. So I'd say we try to wrap it up with the next few questions.
Okay.
And Mr. Schmidt, because I also don't want to take too much time out of your evening, but
I'm good.
Okay. And if we're unable to get through all the questions, would it be all right if I actually send the unanswered questions over to you in a Google document?
Sure.
And then I can send the questions. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
sounds like a plan then. Yeah. So if your question isn't answered, don't be worried. It will be answered at a later point in time. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah.
And so I think another question, I think is actually very interesting. And I'm wondering this as well. So Sean has another question. So for students aspiring to pursue AI and or entrepreneurship in the future, they're wondering what are good places to start to gain real world experience. And they're also asking, would Bria consider taking any for internships?
Great question. And yes, we do. We actually have, from the first day we opened, we have been working very closely with a local high school and take 2 to 3 high school interns every year to work with us. And they bring different skill sets. Some are engineering, some are marketing, some are operational, but they're all working in the accelerator, working with our entrepreneurs around AI, et cetera. So yeah, there are lots of different opportunities. Totally interested in having that conversation on the internship. In terms of where you get started, I think there's 2 answers. One is, I think, I'm going to steal a page out of Melinda's book. I think this is a great place to get started, and because the focus is exactly on helping people in your age group get started and approach AI in a meaningful way. The second way that I would think about it is thinking about groups, meetup groups, and or online or in person, that are focused on your particular industry. Because again, AI is huge and broad, and it's really difficult to kind of find a place to kind of intersect with AI until you get a particular focus. So if you're interested in clean energy, or if you're interested in healthcare, go find a healthcare meetup group and start talking to people about how they're using data. And it's, again, these are not conversations about AI specifically. They're really more about what problem are beyond our current capacity that AI might help solve, right? And so if you're in that conversation, you're asking people about if you had a magic wand, what problem would you solve today? And they talk about, well, we've just got, all these incredible, sensor data from our patients when they're in the hospital, but we have no way to bring it together in a dashboard or really understand what it means. Okay, there's an opportunity for bringing the data together and making sense of it. But that's a great way to kind of get the industry perspective and to find the places in a particular industry that have the gaps. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for gaps beyond human capacity that AI can fill. Those are the ideal businesses to start.
Okay, that's a great answer to also another great question. And we have another question that asks, how would you have your company grow faster with data and products? And could you try to do that even in a single year, or would that have to take more years? Because I know we talked about how companies have to be constantly adapting and stuff like that. So I thought this question was perfect.
Yeah, so growing fast is always a wonderful thing if you can do it. And if you're coming from the engineering perspective, I'll tell you right now that the biggest challenge you're going to face is not engineering. It's going to be finding customers. Because the process of actually identifying customers, finding the right person in the right company to sit down, have a conversation with you, understand what your product does, and trust, because remember, you're a startup, trust that your product is going to solve their big company problem is often a very difficult and slow and painful process. It might take you a year to find and sign contracts with your first 10 customers. So growing fast in a year is a great ideal, but the big barrier in front of you is, do you have a product that customers are going to buy quickly? And that means that you're solving a problem that is a big pain point and that they want it solved quickly. So the work is on you to make sure you're focused on the right stuff.
Definitely. And I think just two or so more questions, unfortunately, time goes by really quickly.
It does go by, yeah.
It does. Yeah, but we have one question I personally also think that's really interesting. So we have Anonymous asking, this is more of a general question, but how do we get our ideas off the ground? Where do we start to build a team, and where do we get that support?
Yeah, so that's exactly what accelerators do, and finding a local community where you have a accelerator that you can go to, and I say go to only because typically an accelerator is somewhat of a local entity. The mentors and the people that work with the accelerator, the resources that they can bring to bear, are typically regional or locally based. And finding an accelerator that is focused on your particular area, your either industry or your technical specialty, is a great place to get the resources to get your idea off the ground. Okay, and the first thing you want to do is to really think about, can you express that idea in a way that somebody else will believe it's real? So there might be some individual development effort that you undertake, just to say, here's what I'm thinking. And it's not because you're building the product, but because you're expressing your idea in a way that other people can look at it and say, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, yeah, it would be a good idea if it had X, Y, and Z, et cetera. When we started our accelerator, we used to have our minimum bar for people to join our accelerator was 2 people and a prototype. And the reason we wanted the prototype was because there would have been enough effort for the founder, that is the creator of the idea, to go through the process and understand, oh, this is harder than I thought, this is easier than I thought, or this is going to take longer than I thought, this is going to take less time than I thought. All of those realizations happen when you actually start to build it. That said, don't fall in love with your product, because the market's going to tell you that it's got some missing pieces and other things that you're going to have to fix. But at the same time, that first step, again, that first innovation usually comes from the founder expressing it in a prototype means that you can share it with somebody else and they can say, I see what you mean. I think that's going to be a great idea. Let's figure out how we can build a team and support it. One more, maybe?
Wait, okay. I think we have time for one more. Okay. Sorry, this is not really a closing question per se, but there's a really specific question from another anonymous guest, and it says, do you think we should spend more time shaping the product or creating a minimum viable product?
Okay. Yeah, there's different definitions of minimum viable product. It's unfortunate because people kind of think about those terms differently. Some people think of minimum viable product as, hey, it's the least amount of something I can put together that I can put in front of somebody and they'd say I like it, right? Or that I'd buy it. You know? The minimum viable product that businesses usually require is the product that will solve the problem. So minimum is not in terms of the effort that you put into it. Minimum is in how the customer defines what I have to have before I'll be interested in purchasing your product. Okay? And so when you say minimum viable product, that's what you really are focused on in the first phase of developing your company. You're converting your prototype into something that a customer will say, yes, I want that. And that period between prototype and your first sale is iterative. So there's lots of customer conversations, not just one, lots of customer conversations, and you're constantly kind of changing it. But that is the focus. That's the focus in the early stages is getting to a minimum viable product that somebody will buy.
Definitely. I think that's a really good point in actually clarifying the differences. And I think with that, unfortunately, we are coming to a close. So I would like to ask a closing question, which is actually hopefully answers some of the unanswered questions in chat as well. It's a question we ask every speaker. So as, of course, most of our audience members are trying to find ways to get involved in artificial intelligence, I'd like to ask you, as a professional in industry, what would be your advice towards a student or someone who is just getting into artificial intelligence? Where do they start? Where do you suggest they go in order to grow that interest?
I think a great question. I think organizations like this are terrific. I think volunteering at or interning at an accelerator is a really good thing. The other place to go would not be interning at a startup, because often startups don't have the capacity to really have the learning and the training programs, but interning at larger companies, interning at Google, interning at Microsoft, interning at Amazon, places that have major focus on developing AI applications is a great way to understand the real world use of data and AI to solve problems. And I think having that perspective is really helpful in bringing it back to the entrepreneurial side. In my career, working at Adobe, a Fortune 500 company, was really helpful in learning about how big companies think, how they operate, how slow they move, how much bureaucracy there is, and why I never want to work at a Fortune 500 company again. Because once you have that entrepreneurial bug, you'll want to be in that fast-moving environment where you can make changes on a daily basis and make a product that people want as quickly as you possibly can. But I think all of those experiences are really super valuable in forming a perspective that will guide you in your startup career.
Definitely. And I think those are some fantastic parting words for our audience, especially I think considering with the industry. I think it's really important to emphasize that real world experience is very important in developing your perspective. And it'll be very helpful in developing instinct, especially in a pretty high-paced environment, I would say, from listening to this presentation. So yeah, definitely. We still have a few questions on the Q&A, but unfortunately we have run out of time. Mr. Schmidt, thank you so much for taking more time than planned originally, because I know we are very, very much over time. But I hope that this was also a rewarding experience for the audience. And thank you, Mr. Schmidt, so much for taking the precious time out of your day to join us and provide us with this insight.
My pleasure, and I'm always supportive of the next generation of entrepreneurs. So I hope all the people on this webinar turn out to start companies and have a successful career as an entrepreneur.
For sure, and maybe if you guys end up making companies, you might want to enroll in Bria.
Right,
like Sally to look out for.
Absolutely.
For sure.
All right.
And thank you everyone for coming. If you have any additional questions that weren't answered, you can email them to us at youthAIlab youthAIlab@gmail.com is the email you can reach out to, and we will directly relay your questions to Mr. Schmidt, where he will answer at his latest convenience. And as well, if you want to watch a replay of this talk, it is available on our YouTube channel. The transcript will also be available on our website for those who want to go back and reread, but don't want to watch 2 hours of footage. And as always, we will have our next talk coming up in March. So everyone, if you're interested in hearing more, keep an eye out, and we will update you when we have more information. Thank you everyone for coming. And if you want to receive updates on more resources, events, and opportunities, we highly suggest you register to join our community on our website, as well as check out maybe our other social media, including our Eventbrite. So thank you everyone for coming, and I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your evening. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Wanda. Thanks, Madeline.
Of course. Thank you for making time today.
All right. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.